善，主要指标呈现积极变
In
化。
April, economic performance
4月份，
continued
在
to
以习近
improve,
平同
with
志为核
major
心的党中央
indicators
坚强领导
showing
下，
positive
全国上
changes.
下统筹。
请他向大家介绍今年4月份国民经济的运行情况，并回答大家关心的问题。首先，我们有请刘市长。
谢谢。下面首先按照惯例，我向大家通报一下4月份国民经济运行的主要情况，然后回答大家关注的问题。4月份国民经济运行继续改善，主要指标呈现积极变化。4月份，在以习近平同志为核心的党中央坚强领
Under
导
the
下，
strong leadership
全国
of
上
General
下
Secretary
统
Xi
筹推进
Jinping
疫情防控
and
和
the
经济社会
people
发展。
work in the
国内
same
疫情防控
page,
向好态势
and we're
持续
working
巩固。
towards and also maintain
复工复
the
产复
hard-won
市扎实推进，
progress in
生
economic
产
and
需
social
求逐步
development.
好转，
We have seen the
基础
good
产业
progress
支
in
撑有力，
resumption
市
of
场预
work
期
and
总体
production,
稳
and
定，
also the
新
market
动能
expectation
逆势
is
增长，
stable.
经济活
And
跃
we've
度
also
提升。
seen the new energy
主要
driving
指
the
标延续了
economy
3月份以来恢
development,
复改
and
善
also we
势
have
头。
seen the good progress
以工业
maintaining
生产
from
由减转
March.
增，制
First,
造
we
业
have
增
seen
速
the
为升
industrial
领先。
production is growing, and
4
also
月
we
份
have
全
seen
国
a
规
big
模以上
momentum
工业
in
增
this
加值
regard.
同比
The
增长
value added of the
4.7%，
industrial
3
enterprise
月
above
份
the
为下
designated
降
price
1.1%，
so
环比增
3.9%
长
is
2.27%。一至4月份，全国规模以上
2.27%
工业增
month
加
on
值
month,
同比下降4.9%，
and the number for
降幅比1至3月份收
March
窄3.5
and
个百分点。
April is the 3.5% is slower than the decline
国有
of the
控股企业
general
增加
by
值
types
增
of
长
ownership.
0.5%，
0.5% for the state holding enterprises, 4.0% for shareholding enterprises, 3.9% for the that of the enterprises funded by foreign investor and investor for Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan, and 0 percentage point for mining,
3月份为下降 1.8%。
5% manufacturing, and the production supply of electricity, thermal power, gas, and water is 0.2%. And also seeing the big progress in the high-tech manufacturing and the equipment manufacturing, 10.5% and 9.3%, 6.6 percentage and
从产品产量看，
5.4 percentage point higher than the
挖掘
general.
产土运输设
And we see
集成电路、
the
工业机器人、微
intricate
型计算机设备
circuits,
产量同
the
比分别增
industrial
长
robots
43.8%、
increased by
40.8%、
40.8% and
20.9%
20.9%.
26.2%。服务业降幅收窄
Second, we have
服务业
seen the
增速放缓
recovery in the service industry and also the good progress in the modern service sector. The number for April is a 4.5% decline, and the number the index of a service production is slower 1.8 percentage point than the first 3 months, and that information transmission software information technology services, the housing industry increased by 5.5%, 4% and 1.1%, and that's for the transportation, storage, post, the accommodation and retail and wholesale also decreased, but that slower 9.7%, 8.1%, and 14 percentage point.
同比下降11.5%。其中，信息传输软
We
件
look at that of the information technology software increased by 4.0%, and the business activity index in April is 5.1, 0.3 percentage point higher than that number in March. For the 21 sectors, 14 out of 21, their number higher than 50 mark, and the order increased by 2.6% compared to the previous months, and the market business activity expectation index increased by 4.4%. And we also see the good progress and recovery in the growth of market sales. The total retail sales of consumer goods in April decreased by 7.5%, 8.3 percentage points better than that of March, and the retail sales of goods decreased by 16.2% and 2.8 percentage point better than that in the first 3 months. By the different areas, retail sales in urban areas decreased by 7.5%, and that for the rural areas decreased by 7.7%. But grouped by consumption pattern, the income of the catering decreased by 31.1%, retail sales of goods decreased by 4.6%, and commodity close to people's lives also seeing the good progress. We look at the green oil, food catering, increased by 18.2% and 19.2%. And the upgrading surveys also have seen the good progress. So we look at the officing supplies, and the communication also increased 5.7 percentage point and 0.4 percentage points higher than the first 3 months. Look at the online retail sales increased by 1.7 percentage point, and the number for the first 3 months is decreased 0.8%, and the online retail sales of physical goods increased by the 2.7%, accounting for 24.1%, 0.5 percentage point higher than that in the first 3 months. And I've also seen the good progress in the fixed assets investment. And the fixed investment decreased, and also the 5.8 percentage point better than the first 3 months. The infrastructure decreased by 11.8%, manufacturing decreased 18.8%, the housing development decreased 13.3%, 7.9, 6.4, and the 6.6 percentage point slower, and the floor space of commercial buildings sold decreased by 3%, and the total sales of commercial buildings also decreased as a 0.7 percentage point and 6.0 percentage point. The investment by different industries 8.1, 5.7, and 5 percentage point. We look at the investment. The computer, the office manufacturing increased. The commercialized of the high-tech manufacturing increased by 12.5%, and investment in the social areas at 5.7 percentage point lower compared to the first 3 months. As we look at the CPI is improving, and the PPI also is seeing the growth. And 6, we look at the employment is comparatively stable, and the new job created is around 3 million. 1 million less compared to the same period last year. The surveyed unemployment is 0.6%, 0.1 percentage point higher than the number in March. The surveyed unemployment rate for population aged from 25 to 59 was 0.3 percentage points higher than that of last month, and the 5.8 percentage point is the urban surveyed unemployment rate in 31 major cities, and the employees of enterprise worker average is 44.3 hours per week, and a decline of 0.5 hour year on year, and we have seen a good progress in exports. So all in all, the index for April is a recovery, and also we have seen the good momentum in this regard, but we also should see that right now this is a global pandemic that also brings a lot of challenges to the domestic economic recovery. Therefore, we should seek to the General Secretary Xi Jinping sought on socialism with Chinese characteristics, and we should also make the epidemic prevention and control as the normal practice, and we should stick to the supply side structural reform, and we should focus on the 6 stability and 6 guarantees, make sure we can expand the domestic needs and also provide service to the enterprises, make sure we can see a stable growth in social and economic development, and make sure we can meet the goal of the poverty alleviation and create a well-off society. Now, floor is open.
59.7%，服务业的商务活动指数是52.1%，都比3月份有一定幅度的回升，说明这个整个企业的预期比这个在环比来看都出现了一定程度的改善。第二，生产需求逐步好转。从工业来看的话，工业刚才说了，当月的工业规模以上工业增加值同比增长3.9%，是从上个月的下降1.1%，转为增长3.9%。那么从行业看，41个大类
Output value of enterprises above designated sites increased by 3.9% by sectors, and among 42 sectors, 28 sectors have registered an increase. 60% of the 600 surveyed products have registered an increase, and the gross margin reached more than 20%, and power usage increased by 2.6%, but last month it's narrowed by 1.8%. And from the perspective of service industry, and the decline of the service industry narrowed by 4.6% as compared to March. And from the perspective of investment, investment is also picking up. From January to April, fixed asset investment went down by 10.3%, and this is narrowed by 4.8% as compared to the last month. And for the real estate investments and manufacturing investment, the decline narrowed by 4.6%. And for market sales, it's also improved, and total consumer goods declined by 8.5%, narrowed by 3.6% as compared to last month. From exports increased beyond our expectations, and it's up by 4.8%. And thirdly, we have continually witnessed the transformative development of the economy, and for the first quarter, we continue to witness the dramatic improvement of new business models such as online sales. Online sales increased by 8.6% in last month, and for the retail goods of real goods, online increased by 5.5% as compared to last year. And from the perspective of industry, the manufacturing industries now has the proportion of 5.4% larger than last month, and we see that fiber cable and the communications industry have registered very obvious improvements. And fourthly, the commodity price has maintained stable, and the surveyed unemployment rate was 6.0%, and this is slightly larger than last month by 1%. And we basically surveyed the people aging between 25 to 69, and the surveyed unemployment rate is 6%. From the perspective of commodity price, it has basically maintained stable, and the average commodity price increased by 3.3%, narrowed by 1% as compared to last month. And food price drop has continued to this decline. The price of pork and the fresh vegetables and other food categories have registered a price drop. So in general, from all those indicators and those perspectives, in general, we can say that the momentum of economic performance have basically followed the momentum of recovery of March. So some of them actually unleashed potential from March, and you can compare the indicator between January and April, because In the first quarter, the indicators have basically maintained a trend of going down. And for service industry, the production value from January to April went down by 9.9%, and investment decreased by 10.3%, and retail went down by 12.3%. And so from all those indicators, you can see that the economic performance have basically declined over the past few months, and we haven't normalized to the normal range in a usual year, and we are still addressing the blow brought by the coronavirus pandemic, and we face sophisticated situation here domestically, and we have to embrace this bottom line demand side, and we need to create favorable conditions so as to guarantee 6 areas and stabilize 6 major indicators so that we can help these enterprises to get out of their difficulties and to promote the running and operation of the economy so that we can normalize the economy as soon as possible. Thank you. Next question, please. I'm with China News Agency. The pandemic overseas is still ravaging, and given this backdrop, what is your expectation on the economic performance in the second quarter? And we see that in April, the economy is not picking up that dramatically. And what is your projection of the economy going forward? Thank you very much for your question. Given the very challenging situation here at home and globally, everybody is watching closely the development of the pandemic, and our judgment in particular, the economic indicators over the past 2 months, I can give you 3 projections. First, we are confident, and this confidence comes from a long-term accumulation of a very comprehensive industrial system, a gigantic market scale, and these advantages can help us cope with the pandemic, and we can see that those fundamentals haven't changed dramatically, and during this pandemic, those are the key pillars of our economic performance. And over the past few months, and you can see that those key sectors that are closely relevant to the livelihood have registered an increase. For example, masks, life supplies. We have basically maintained the livelihood of 1.4 billion people. So we have this confidence, and the confidence also comes from the basic trend of transformative growth of our economy. And from the updates in April, you can see that sectors related to new growth drivers have maintained a momentum of growth, and they are continuing to expand. And against the pandemic, they have defied the odds and grown against all difficulties. And so we're witnessing the expansion of new growth drivers. And the second projection is that we have the confidence that comes from the efforts of the Chinese government in coordinating the resources and efforts from all channels, and we have achieved some very positive results. And for 2 consecutive months, we have witnessed a recovery, and this indicates the robustness of our economy, and this has further prepared us in handling more economic risks. From some indicators, such as investments and total investments of new development programs, and from January to April, it has increased by 1.1%, and this indicates that we have a lot of programs that are ready for investments, and the situation is picking up in general. And from the perspective of industrial power usage in April has registered a positive figure in April, and from the first half of May, our monitoring shows that the figure is improving continuously. So from all these indicators, we can see that the general momentum of recovery can be sustained. My third line to answer your question is that we do face challenges. The pandemic is expanding overseas, and it hasn't been basically contained overseas, and this will pose continuous impact to the global economy. Domestically, here in China, the epidemic has been basically contained, but from the economic perspective, the recovery hasn't been truly normalized, and we still face mounting pressure in terms of employment. There is a lot of difficulties confronting enterprises in their operation, so we have to be highly alerted and mindful about the potential hazards and risks. So we have to consolidate the execution of the macro control measures, and on the other hand, we have to follow with the situation very closely and adjust our countermeasures in a timely manner so that we can normalize our economy. Thank you. Next question, please.
Keith Bradshaw, New York Times. The services number was not bad last month, but retail sales looked much weaker, and if you take out groceries, they were quite weak. Are consumers in China becoming more cautious about making large value discretionary purchases? Thank you.
您好，我是纽约时报的记者。服务业的数据在4月份还是不错的，但是我们看零售业，如果刨除零售总额的话，我们看到一些其他的数据并不是太好。这是否意味着中国的消费者对于一些可选择性的消费更加谨慎了？谢谢。
Thank you very much for your question. I think you have watched the data very carefully. As China is entering a prolonged stage of pandemic control, and we have to watch this data from the perspective of the general backdrop and from the production side and to the demand side, and there will be heavy blows dealt from the pandemic, and judge that present or recovery at the production side is faster than on the demand side, and this is related to the overall development of the epidemic, and China is now entering into a routine state of pandemic control, and there will be a lot of consumption behaviors that will be restricted. For example, consumption behaviors at the closed space where people gather and crowd together as the group to purchase, and these kind of behaviors will be restricted, and the recovery of the service industry and the retail industry features a discrepancy, as you have just mentioned, and the total social retail sales in April have grown slightly slower than the service industry. For the first service industry, and it's a very comprehensive sector. It has a lot of dots and a lot of different areas, and it has many different types of consumption formats. For example, we have some of the consumptions, such as online education and distance officing, and those type of service, they were not affected by the pandemic, and they were actually growing very dramatically amidst this pandemic. And so that is why, in general, the service industry grew better than the recovery of the retails, and that is the reason behind this discrepancy. Thank you. Next question, please. Thank you very much. I'm with CGTN. In April, total retail sales went down by 7.5%, narrowed by 8.8% as compared to March, and this shows a sign of recovery. So what is the potential of expanding our domestic consumption against the backdrop of raging pandemic overseas? And total social retails went down by 7.5%, narrowed by 8.5% as compared to March. Structurally, life-related commodities have maintained a very fast growth, and this includes food and grocery and drinks and beverages, and those have maintained a double-digit growth. Secondly, for upgraded consumption category, it has accelerated in terms of recovery, and this includes office facilities and telecommunications-related products, and they have maintained a double-digit growth, and the culturally related products have also grown very rapidly. And third, some major products such as vehicles are also growing very dramatically, and the total sales of vehicles equaled that of March in terms of total sets sold. And so these have contributed to the narrowing of the decline as compared to March. And for my projection of the economy going forward, and I would say that our momentum will be sustained. And since the beginning of this year, you can compare the different change trend of the retail sectors, and the overall trend hasn't changed. And for basic grocery and commodities, they have accelerated their growth, and for some sectors that have been affected by the pandemic, the sales have been truly affected and they are going down. But now they are recovering. So that is why we believe that the long-term trend hasn't changed. And with the reopening of the economy and with the normalization of the life and work order, we believe that consumption will pick up in the near future. And although we do face some challenges, we do face a lot of risk factors, and from the consumption side, you can still feel this pressure. But in general, our momentum of recovery can be sustained. Thank you very much. I'm with Economic Daily. The PMI shows that the enterprises are reopening, but they still face the pressure of lacking orders, and this shows that our industrial chain hasn't normalized because of the pandemic. And what are the measures that you have to consolidate our advantage in terms of industrial chain? The output price of the industrial products declined by 3.1%, and this is actually widening the decline as compared to March. And this is mainly because of the pandemic overseas, and the global price for oil have further declined, and the OPEC price for oil declined by 70% as compared to the year beginning. And if we talk about the other indicators, for example, the futures price of oil in April declined by more than 40% as compared to March. So this is the price of oil on the global markets, and this is affecting some of the industries here domestically, in particular the oil and gas industry. And if you look at the oil exploitation, it's actually declined by more than 50%, and this will affect the orders of the manufacturing industry and also our industrial chain. And it also reflects the fact that given the pandemic, there is the drop of demand in the manufacturing industry, and we do face this pressure of decline. As I have introduced, 50% of the enterprises, or 85% of the enterprises above designated sites haven't truly reopened in a 100% manner, and we do face a lot of challenges in these aspects. And this change of the demand will affect our production. So from the perspective of PPI, on the one hand, we have to consolidate our efforts in resumption of industrial operations so that we can unleash our potential. And secondly, we have to follow the price changes of commodities on a global market so that we can normalize the trend of PPI here domestically. But I believe that with the recovery of normal life orders, and we will see a very promising prospect in this aspect. I'm with Reuters. By which quarter do you anticipate that our economy will get out of the difficulty? And what are the key focus of the policies going forward? Is it in investment or in consumption? Thank you very much. So this question is about the future. So from our monthly data, as I have just updated you, industrial operation in April have registered a positive figure. It increased by 3.9%, but this is still there is still a large gap between the normal years, and for consumption, retail, and investment, and exports, and also the service industry. All of these are in a trend of declining. So from the current trend, I can tell you that although the monthly data is picking up in terms of the gap, in terms of the narrowing gap, and although we are witnessing a recovery trend, but if we compare this data of this year as other years and to reach the level of an ordinary year, and we still face a huge gap. And this is not just hinged upon the progress of domestic economic reopening, but also hinges upon the economic recovery of the world. So in general, I would tell you that we still need some time, and we still need to look at the situation very carefully for some time. And as I have also introduced that our policies have reached very positive results in terms of resumption of industrial operations. So we have the result, we have the conditions, and we have the confidence to sustain this momentum. And the second part of your question is related about the expansion of domestic consumption. And at a time when there is a lot of uncertainty in foreign demand, so we have to stick with the policy of expanding our domestic consumption. On the one hand, we have to lay a solid foundation for consumption, and second, we have to focus on the crucial role of investment. And from the consumption perspective, there are 2 points that you need to take note of. We have to promote online sales so that online sales can continue to grow, and second, offline sales has to be recovered very quickly. From this investment perspective, and our current indicators show a recovery sign, and a lot of the investment activities are picking up. And so in the next step, we have to further consolidate the policies that we have introduced during the pandemic, and we have to improve our support to some of the sectors so that we can improve the foundation and consolidate the fundamentals of our consumption so that we can dramatically improve the crucial role of investment on consumption. I'm with CNBC. 2 questions. The first is about employment. According to our current survey, so what is the quality of employment at present? And second question, of mine is about consumption. Now, what is the offline consumption really look like at present? Thank you. So, for your first question, the quality of the employment. From the change of the surveyed unemployment rate, you can see that between different months, the change hasn't been that dramatic. And for February, 2.6%, and for March, 5.2%, and for April, 6%. So the change has been very smooth. But in general, we face mounting pressure in terms of employment. According to what I have just updated, the total scale of employment is lower than the same period last year, and the surveyed new employment in urban areas is 3.54 million. So it shows that the total employment scale is declining, and from the surveyed unemployment rate, it's also larger than the same period last year. The surveyed unemployment rate in April is 6.0%, and this is 1% larger year on year, and this indicates a mounting pressure in unemployment. We do face a lot of pressure in these aspects, and in particular, our migrant workers. By the end of April, we conducted a quick survey about the resumption of work of migrant workers, and through a number of policies and measures and supportive actions, migrant workers have found it easier to find a job by the end of April, and by the end of April, the resumption of work for migrant workers have reached 90% of a normal year. But we also have the problem of college graduates, and we have 8.47 college graduates who are ready to go to the job market. So we do face a lot of pressure. So employment is at the top of our priority. And so we attach great importance to this very important question, and so we have taken a number of very targeted measures, and with all those measures, and despite of the pressure, we have seen some very positive changes. For example, we have disclosed a data that 80.3% of the people, they haven't been fired, but they're still working at home. And according to our latest data, this percentage has gone down to the level of 3.5%. The second part of your question is about the consumption in first-tier cities, and I only have at my hand the data at the national level, and for the specifics, I can tell you that I will bring this question back to my office and give you an answer after consultation with my colleagues. I'm with Xinhua News Agency, and in the second quarter, there's always some turning points, and some people call this the second quarter phenomenon. But given the momentum this year, do you anticipate such turning point in the second quarter? Thank you very much for your question. So everybody is very concerned about the future, in particular our economy in the second quarter. And from the indicators that I have just briefed, and given the general environment of the economy, I have given you my projections, and so at present, we do have the confidence and the conditions and the resolve to promote economic growth in all aspects. And under the joint efforts of all the enterprises, we are able to sustain the momentum of recovery, but we do face a lot of uncertainties and unstable elements, and we have to grasp with the favorable conditions of our economic operation, we have to embrace the bottom line mindset and seize the favorable conditions and transform them into the momentum of growth, so that we can help these enterprises to get over this difficulty period and achieve our targets. Last question, please.
谢谢主持人。向经济导报记者提问，因为现在已经是5月份了，就说上半年就剩1个月了。
Hong Kong Economic Daily. We are entering May already, and it's less than 1 month to go for the first half of the year to end. And at the time when the pandemic is still expanding overseas, then are you confident that our economy this year can guarantee the growth rate of 6%? So this is yet another question about the future, and this is about the change of the exports and also the projection of our GDP growth this year. And let me reiterate that for the exports, we do face some uncertainties and unstable elements, and because recently a lot of the international organizations, they have released their projections of the economy this year, and IMF predicted that the economy of the world will decline by 3%, and the World Trade Organization and the United Nations have downgraded their projection of the economy. So at a time when the global economy is going down, the Chinese exports do face a very big challenge, although the indicators of exports in April registered a positive growth, but we cannot be too optimistic about this data, and because this is a hard-won data. This is achieved because of a lot of the stimulus policies and measures, and we have adjusted our policy, and we leveraged our competitive edges, and we have a very diversified layout and landscape of exports, and this is truly hard-won result. But we have to be mindful that our export cannot isolate itself from the general picture of the world economy, and we have to be mindful about the potential risks going forward. And with respect to the projection of the GDP growth this year, I would like to reiterate that we have to leverage our potentials and focus on our competitive edges. We have to fight the challenge head-on and help our enterprises to get rid of those difficulties and promote the fast and smooth recovery of our economy. All right, this is the end of today's release. Thank you.